Hey guys, my name is Sadie Breezy in the place to busy, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm talking about HIV and AIDS on South African television shows. So basically it's like TV shows I grew up watching that were centered around HIV, or that probably had like a few storylines on HIV and AIDS. So growing up, as I did mention before, literally the only exposure or the only information I got about like HIV and AIDS were literally things that I saw on the media, things I saw on TV, heard about in like on the radio, I read about on magazines, and a little bit of information I got from school, you know. So I've put together like a list of the TV shows that I used to watch that had those storylines about HIV and AIDS. So the first one, I'm not quite sure if they had like a storyline on HIV and AIDS. I'm just going to mention it because okay, well, let me just tell you guys what the first one is. So the first one is Yizo, and obviously if you guys are around my age group, you would know that growing up we were not really allowed to watch that. So I didn't really watch it like freely. So I was not allowed to watch it, but of course of like Nikki Okomela here and there every now and then. And the only thing that comes to mind when I think of it is a lot of young people just engaging in sexual activities, like a lot of young people having sex. I don't remember a storyline on a person who was living with HIV or a person who probably got infected with HIV in the show, but I would like to believe that there would have been a storyline on that somewhere on the show. The second one is Soul City. So Soul City basically used to serve as like a mirror of challenges of South Africans, and amongst all the other issues that they used to talk about and shed a light on, HIV and AIDS was the prominent one. It had 13 seasons, and I also don't remember much about the series or like the storylines on HIV and AIDS. The one that really comes to mind is the role that was played by Sibulele Chana. I hope I said her name right. She had like red braids on the show, and I remember she had like a daughter. I can't remember if the daughter was or was not born with the virus, but I know that she was living with HIV and she was quite sick. And I think that was like in I think her storyline was featured in like one of the last few seasons of the show. The other storyline that I remember on Soul City was Konisicheo's story, and I don't even think that it was like a storyline. I do believe that they basically just took her life as it was and put it on the show, because she literally was all that she is. Alright, yeah, so I also remember of her when I think of Soul City and when I think of people who were living with HIV. The third one gave Hamokate. So Hamokate, I watched it like once, and it was years ago. I think I was like 13 or 12, so I don't really remember a lot on the show, but I do remember how they used to depict HIV and AIDS, and like basically how they used to portray people who were living with HIV. They were obviously it was basically a story that was built in a village setting, and they were kind of trying to show how people in the rural areas back then did not really know much about HIV and AIDS, which kind of perpetuated the stigma and perpetuated a lot of challenges for people who were living with HIV. I do remember the character Nuku that was played by Balisa Mtsuminyane, and I think I only remember that one quite clearly because just recently I had a friend of mine call me, and she was like, I was watching this show Pamukate, and she was like, so there's a character called Nuku, and I remember watching her and feeling like this woman reminds me of Satan. I was like, Okay, so I do remember that character quite well. I think she was a nurse or something, but I know that she was living with HIV, and she probably was open about her status, or she just tried to help people who were living with HIV in the community. The fourth one is Tsha Tsha. Now the with Tsha Tsha, it's like the same with Yizo. I remember watching it. I know that we were not quite allowed to, well, I wasn't quite allowed to like watch it, but I used to like okomela it every now and then. So I don't remember much, but I do know that it was a story that was based on young people's lives and young people's lives surrounding HIV. The fifth one was Gazlam. So Gazlam, I used to watch it, but I don't remember much about it. I feel like this video is going to be so boring because I don't remember much about all these things that I'm talking about. But with Gazlam, the one storyline that stood out for me and that I still remember there's two. There's one of that lady who, I think it was like on the first episode where she was meant to be married, and I think it was like an arranged marriage set up, and then she escaped. And then there was another woman who contracted HIV, and I remember her sitting in a bathtub crying and cutting herself. And because I think I was like 8 or 9 when that show was on SABC1. I remember, because I was so young, I was not quite aware of things like people who literally cut themselves and stuff. So I could not understand what was happening. So in my mind, I remember just thinking, I don't know if it was something that I thought of or if it was said in the show, but I remember thinking this lady, the reason that she's cutting herself so much is because she's trying to remove the virus from her blood. That is why she's cutting herself so much, and she's trying to bleed as much as possible. I didn't really think that she was trying to commit suicide. I just thought that she just wanted to remove the virus from her blood. That is why I still remember the show. The sixth one is Foreplay, Sex Tips for Girls. I have never watched it. I remember when it started airing on ETV, I used to like see the ads and stuff, but I've never really had like an interest in watching it. Maybe it's because like a lot of these shows, it came out when I was quite young, so I didn't really have an interest in watching it. Sorry, but I do know that if it was to come back now, I'd probably watch it, because my understanding of the show is basically just them dealing with the lives of those 4 women who were I think in like their 30s, and they were just trying to navigate their lives through love, life and sex. And of course, with love, life, sex and being in that age group, you have to meet people, and people from different backgrounds also means that you will meet people who are living with HIV. So this is just me thinking, I'm not sure. I get sure. The 7th one is Intersection. This one was a game changer. Intersection basically showed us the effects, the ripple effect of having multiple partners. So literally it was the original entanglement. It was quite informative. I watched it. I think it had like 3 to 4 seasons, and I think I've watched them all. It had different storylines. What I appreciated about it was the fact that they had so many different storylines, and because it had so many different storylines, everyone could relate to at least one storyline in the show. So it was quite informative. I'm glad that it's now back on Netflix and people can still go back to it and watch it. I haven't really watched it now, but I do appreciate that production, because genuinely I do feel like it did a lot in educating us as a country and us as the world on HIV and AIDS. The last one is Yesterday. Yesterday was a movie starring Mama Leliti Kumalo. There were quite a few other prominent actors on the show. I watched it once, and actually let me give you guys a young story time about the day I watched Yesterday. So remember, I found out about my HIV status when I was 14, right? And I found out like in June in 2009, and it took me like 6 months to start disclosing and stuff. So when I went to the clinic for a second opinion with my aunt, coming back from the clinic, I went to my friend's place. I got there and they were watching yesterday, and I had just come from the clinic, just found out of my status, and just, I mean, my feelings were messed up. Everything was just all over the place, and I sat through that movie watching it, and it was horrific. I was scared. I was just like, is this what my life is going to be like? What is going to happen to me? So I remember just feeling like, what a messed situation. Why would I go from the clinic to come straight here and find these people watching yesterday? So yesterday basically was a story of a woman who, she was a married woman, and she started getting, her husband stayed in the mines. He was working at the mines, so he stayed there, and she started getting sick. She went to the clinic, they tested her, results came back positive. She went to, I think she went to her husband's workplace, or the husband came home one day, and she disclosed to her husband, because I mean, this was her husband, and if she had tested positive for HIV, she basically had to tell her husband. So she told him, and he beat her up. And he never came back home again. The only time he came back home was when he had started getting sick, and he came back home quite sick, and she still had to like deal with the whole stigma from the community, because people were just like, ooh, this man, blah, blah, blah. And because I remember her building a little shack, and she kept him there because she was trying to avoid the community killing him. I honestly cannot remember the full details of the movie, but I know that it was basically a story of a wife who got infected with HIV by her husband. And I remember that like her main, because shortly after her husband passed on, she also started getting sick. I remember her kind of deteriorating, and she was like, her main aim or her main goal was to just wait until her daughter started school. She basically just wanted to see her daughter go to school. And yeah, it's a sad movie. It's an enlightening and educational movie, and I'd still want to watch it again actually. Yeah. I know it's the last one, but like, there used to be a TV show called Siyanqoba Beat It. It was on SABC 1. So basically Siyanqoba was a TV show. I think I've only watched like one episode, but I think it was a TV show that kind of spoke on like the issues of people who were living with HIV. It was presented by this presenter, this woman who was also living with HIV. I can't remember if I started watching it like after my diagnosis or before, but I remember seeing a show like that on SABC 1. And yeah, and a major shout out to Scandal and Isidingo for having characters in their soapies, because these Isidingo and Scandal are basically soapies, South African soapies, and they had characters. In Isidingo it was Nandipa, and in Scandal it was Palesa, played by Klubimboya, Isidingo Nandipa, and Palesa was played by Refilwe Madumo on Scandal. So these two women were living with HIV, and I just loved how the shows did not, like, in as much as we as the viewers knew that these people were living with HIV, they tried not to make a whole spectacle on them living with HIV. And that's what a lot of times, like, it kind of like bores me that it's always like, if there's going to be a character who's living with HIV in a show, there has to be like a whole storyline centered around that, where they have to either disclose or they have to like get rejected, or a whole lot of things have to happen for them to kind of get to a place where they are fine. And I don't like that narrative. I just want to see characters who are living with HIV having normal characters that have nothing to do with their HIV statuses, living their normal lives. We saw Palisa have a child. I can't remember if Nandipa ended up getting a child, but I remember that she was married for the longest time. Palisa was also married. They never ever made their storylines be centered around their HIV statuses, and I appreciated it so much. So that is all from me. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any other TV shows that you feel like I might have forgotten, you can comment down below and share them with me or with us. And if you are new here, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you guys for subscribing. Thank you guys for the support. Thank you guys for the love. I love you guys so much. Bye.